You got to do an eviction and there's 3 massive dogs in the unit? Yes, this is what we talk about with our favorite paralegal, Bita Delisi, right after this. Here we are, my friends. Internet technology at its best, but Bita always makes it work. Bita, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, Gary. How are you?
I am doing excellent, excellent. Thanks for tuning in with me today, because Bita is here with her phone, so we don't want to miss a beat here. And as you all know, Bita is our favorite paralegal in all of the land. What story do you have for us this week?
Well, Rob, as we speak, Rob, who's my team member here in the office, and my partner and my husband, and he is on an eviction right now where the tenant is a member of a church, and the church owns the property. So the church is a landlord who did not receive rent, and I will say it's about $32,000 that's owed. And even that type of landlord, being a church or a corporation, can be a landlord and they can evict and they will evict.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who the landlord is. If the rent is not being paid, they have the right to enforce an eviction.
That's actually a good point. And we always tend to think it's, the mom and pop landlords or the big corporations, but you've got everybody as clients, churches, and everybody in between. You don't pay rent. There's some ramifications, right?
There are, and you know what? Rightfully so, because even the church has expenses, right? Even if that property is paid off, there's still property taxes, there's still maintenance, there's still other routine maintenance that needs to be done, and they require the funds, the rental income, in order to maintain the property.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And during an eviction, talk to us. And I know we've talked about this in other videos, but just for those that are perhaps tuning in for the first time, uh, Rob's there. Like, what maybe we should be talking to Rob and doing a live shot of this. That would be something, but we won't do that. What what do I want to ask? Like, what's that? Not to say the experience, but what's that process? He's there. Is he there with a sheriff? Like, what's happening at this present moment during an actual eviction?
So the sheriff was supposed to be there at 9:30 this morning, right? And unfortunately, they were not, because the previous eviction that was booked for 9 o'clock didn't go to plan. It wasn't as quick. So the sheriff, as I'm informed, just got there about 15 minutes ago. The tenant is still in the property. So when the sheriff arrives, they will knock on the door. They will inform the tenant that today is eviction day, to grab what they need, and they have about 10 minutes or until the locksmith changes the locks on the spot to vacate the property. They will wait for the tenant to grab their belongings and escort them out. Once they're escorted out, they will post a notice of vacant possession to the front door of the property with the date and the exact time of the eviction. In which case, once the property is secured, once the locks have been changed, once they do a walkthrough to make sure all the faucets are shut, there's no running water, the property is secure, the windows are closed, then the clock starts. And what I mean by that is that the tenant will then have about 72 hours to make arrangements with the landlord in order to remove their belongings. If they do not remove their belongings in 72 hours, the landlord can do whatever they want. They can sell it back to the tenant, they can dispose it, they do whatever they want. They can keep it. It belongs to the landlord.
Gotcha. That's interesting. And we should preface this. I was going to say we should summarize that. Make sure, if you've been watching Bita's other videos with us, lock all the windows and doors and change all the locks and everything, right?
Yes, please make sure, even the back door.
Yeah.
Even the back door. So make sure you put a stick behind the back door, the
The sliding
screen,
door. Yeah.
sliding door. You got it. Even the windows. if they don't have locking mechanisms, make sure that they can't be pried open.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And
Okay.
and I'd like to get your comments on this or your thoughts on this. A lot of landlords will think, "Oh my gosh, eviction," and that's a big ordeal. It is a big ordeal in that sense. How often? And I know where people's mind go. How often does it get where physically do tenants or do people have to be removed? It's not very often, is it? Like once the sheriff shows up, that's
Yeah, they have an idea that they're being evicted. I mean, they receive several notices. They receive a copy of the order from the Landlord and Tenant Board telling them that they have until X date to move out. And if they don't, the sheriff will the landlord can start a sheriff proceedings the day after. And then once the sheriff has the paperwork that we send in, once we file with the sheriff's office, the sheriff will notify the tenant again
Mhm.
that they're coming on this day or any day after this day without any further notice.
Yeah,
So the tenant is notified. They know that they're on their way out. Most tenants, what they do is if they owe money, they try and find a place as soon as possible, right? It's
yeah,
best to get out of there.
yeah,
And other
exactly.
tenants who don't, they get walked out by the sheriff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know in one of the cases I had, and maybe we should touch on this too, where there's animals in the house, like pets, right? And one of the evictions we had to do many years ago, three massive, massive dogs. How often do you get into that where you actually have to call, who do you got to call? Well, maybe that's the best question.
That's a good question because sometimes they even give us the runaround. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of people don't leave their pets behind.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't leave their pets behind, but we do have those who do, and we often call the Humane Society or Animal Control, but they give us the runaround. It is actually, believe it or not, the landlord should be coming in and giving the animal some food and water.
Yeah.
We had an eviction not too long ago. It was close to our office, and Rob he's a big teddy bear. He's got a big heart for animals. So the tenant who was evicted, we had to, the 72-hour period. The tenant left two cats behind, and Rob went by every day for the 72 hours to change the water and give those animals food.
Yeah.
So make sure you take your pets with you.
Yeah, yeah. And I know when we did an eviction in this particular case, sheriff went in. The tenant was actually away at work, and the sheriff walked in. They did their thing, but they couldn't go in until we had those three massive. I'm talking massive dogs removed, and animal control went in and actually removed them. It was an interesting experience from that perspective, right? And then the sheriff gave me the heads up. Yep, you're good. Go change everything. And that was an interesting conversation later, as you could imagine.
They must have been big dogs.
Oh, they were massive. Like each one was probably about 140 pounds and above.
Wow.
They were, like I said, they were massive. Two of them they were just big teddy bears.
Oh,
And then there was one
but they're
somewhat
intimidating.
aggressive.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and even the sheriff won't even go in
nope,
if no, they're not going to
nope.
risk safety.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And it was one of those things too where I'm having the conversation because if I remember correctly, the sheriff calls me the landlord. Is that not correct? To set up the appointment, right?
yeah.
Uh yeah. And I
Or
remember
or
that.
your representative.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the conversation and I just happened to mention that there were dogs there, and that was a learning lesson. I will always mention when there's pets, right? Just
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Yeah. I'd
Yeah,
like to know.
otherwise they'll come back. Otherwise, they won't carry out the eviction and they'll have to reschedule and come back.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is a good conversation. I'm glad we ended up here. I'm curious to know. I obviously we mentioned many months ago. You and I, or you mentioned the fact that the LTB board hiring more adjudicators and whether that was good or bad. Of course, it's good, but just their level of competency and things like that. Of course, over time they get better and they get more experience, just like everyone else. But with the additional hires, are we seeing the number or that turnaround time for hearings decrease, increase, stay the same? Where are we at?
In our experience, it's staying the same.
Gotcha.
Now, we will receive notices of hearings quicker, but it doesn't mean your matter will be heard quicker.
Right.
If we receive it within the 30 days that we file, it's still 7 or 8 months from now. We're
Wow.
receiving notices of hearing for March 2024. So it's
Wow.
still some time from now.
Yeah. So we are September 1st. If you're watching this on not on September 1st, you're looking at March dates right now. And I asked this question offline, and I'm going to circle back to it. Are you filing more files today than you were, say, 6 months ago or a year ago?
So here's what we're noticing. We're noticing a lot more non-payment of rent notices and a lot more N12 notices for the purchaser's own use, which means a lot of landlords, especially the small landlords, are starting to sell off their assets. And we anticipated this from the last podcast, and it was because of the rise in the interest rates,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And that's the ripple effect that,
Yeah.
it's wow. That's a whole can of worms there that we can really talk about with A, affordable housing, B, the number of rental units that are currently available. And wouldn't you know it, just in this conversation alone, we're seeing the number of rental of units decrease,
Decrease, yes.
right?
Decrease. Well, Gary, who wants to be a landlord now? Right? I mean, the government wants you to house the tenants, but they don't provide you with protection. So some landlords are saying, Bita, why am I going to front up my after tax dollars, purchase rental property, get a tenant in there, and then they stop paying, and now I have to wait 7 to 8 months, and hopefully they will get evicted.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it. I mean, that's that's the truth of the matter, right? Is right now, it's not, well, let's call it like it's not a fun time to be a landlord when you don't have great tenants. And mind you, we've got great tenants, and there's great tenants out there, and there's great people out there that are our tenants, and we love you for it, right? But on the flip side, when it's always that small minority that create, you know, the conversation around, wow, this is such a difficult industry to be in, but that's the reality of it, right?
Yeah, yeah. But even with all this, Gary, real estate is still the best investment.
It is. It really is. And over time, of course, if you bought in the last 12 to 18 months and you're experiencing non-payment of rent or a variable rate mortgage, we get it. We sympathize, empathize with you. But over time, it is a good investment. Uh, Talk to us a little bit about just being a better prepared landlord. I know in our last video, I asked the question, who is more educated, the tenant or the landlord? And a landslide, you said, without even skipping a beat, oh, the tenant's way more educated, prepared. Talk to us how landlords can be a little bit more educated on the landlord tenant board, or just simple good interactions with tenants.
So, firstly, landlords need to understand the difference between legal advice and legal information. Okay.
Mm,
And they need to hook up with a paralegal, right? That can assist them, right? With respect to providing legal advice or legal information. I find that landlords only educate themselves once they hit a roadblock and not before. Always keep reading up, right? I mean, everybody has access to the internet nowadays. Always keep reading up case law. Always keep reading up on the changes with respect to the board and with respect to the act. And Gary, we are always here to provide support to landlords and agents throughout the province of Ontario. And we can be simply reached by way of an email. So definitely hook up with a paralegal that can support you. Don't wait.
back from the internet ghosts. We're back. Bitta's back with us. But here's the thing, to summarize that, Bitta, we get it. Like, you, me, everyone else, as a landlord, especially small landlords, we can't wear every single hat and be the, professional of every single thing, from a plumber to electrician to you name it, to, paralegal. Many, many years ago, and I know you and I both learned this valuable lesson. That's why we need amazing people on our team to handle certain specific aspects of, especially in this case, law, right? Landlord tenant board. And you need to be a student of it, but you don't need to be the professional of it as landlords, right? That's where we have people like you and others and so forth, right?
You got it. You got it. You can't be a jack of all trades.
No, you need to know. Here, I always say this. I need to know who, I got my phone, who to call, right? Who you gonna call? If you just need about 4 or 5 people on that power team, as it were, who you gonna call? And
You
let me
got
tell you, Beta needs to be at top of that list always. Always. Good stuff. Let's wrap this up. Remind us again, how do people get in touch with you? And don't forget your Instagram channel this time.
I will not. I will say head over to our social media, like us, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Lots of great information and great videos there to keep yourself educated so that you don't have to dig for the information. So it's all on our Instagram and Facebook pages, but you can actually book a free discovery call from our website, stonegatelegalservices.ca. Or better yet, send us an email, info@stonegatelegalservices.ca. All of our contact information is on our website. Reach out at any time. We're here to support you.
That's excellent. And trust me, I say it every time. You will not be disappointed by their Instagram feed, your Instagram feed. Go follow it because it's, if you're like me, you like information in short bits, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So go follow Stonegate on Instagram. For Bita, I'm Gary McGowan. We'll see everybody on the next video. Goodbye for now. Thanks.
Bye for now.